because that's how you're going to get super good at this skill. So instead of practicing just with one person now, as you have been doing, Felix has been doing with Gabby or whoever it is, I want you to now have teams of three people, which I know is more logistics, but it's really worth it. And the reason for that is so that one person can observe. Why is it important to do that? Even as a practice in your head, even if you don't actually go ahead and reserve a time for this, just imagine what it's like. The third person always is the one who's like, oh, ask them this. Oh, this is what should happen next. Oh, this is what you're missing. You know, you have that instinct, isn't it true? Yeah, Jody, right? Don't you always have that instinct of like, oh, and what does that show you? I'll just pause right there and ask you, what does it show you when you study that part of your character that's like, oh, ask this? Have you ever noticed that when we're doing demos, people write into the chat, this is what it is, ask them this? What is that?
Because they're not really busy thinking about the right question or the next part. So you're more observing, I think.
Yeah, and since there is no right question,
Right. I'm just thinking if you're the observer, just like it implies you're more likely to be observing rather than in your own head.
and so
Right.
then, Gilles, when you're thinking to yourself, oh, ask this, or oh, you missed that, what are you noticing? What do you notice about yourself right there?
Mhm.
I
It's
know, I told
possible, it's possible that I stopped listening.
But what about that instinct to give advice or to tell the other therapist, hey, ask this? Yeah, what's up with that? Jody, is your volume thing still not working? Because I can tell you have an answer. It's not working. We just need to wait for the break until you can fix it. Do you want to type it in the chat? I know you know the answer. When you're hearing yourself doing that advice giving, what's really happening is, well, yeah, I see. I figured it out. It's very important.
Mm.
I have nothing to lose. I'm not invested like a therapist. Okay, but there's something else. What you're noticing when you are having that instinct is your ego. You're noticing that
Mm.
you are still important, that you still think that there's something you know about what's happening. And that's why the observer position in practice is so important because when you're doing it in as the client or as the client or as the practice therapist, you're still involved in it to the point where you think that, you know, what you're doing is right or important or whatever. But when you take yourself out and become the observer, you really realize that everything that you think in your head is still biased towards you. And that is the thing that we're really trying our best to let go of to make the transformations happen faster. So, a way to enhance your practice skill is to do nothing and just notice what happens. Look for the UMs, just practicing looking for UMs. And also, you can try, this might be fun for Gilles, for you, Gilles, try adding in the stuff you already know and see how it goes. See what happens. This isn't a practice session. Because what you're going to find, I think, is the more stuff you try to add in, the more resistance you encounter. The more times you try to add something that is from your ego state, from your perspective, the more interruptions you create. So I want you to get good at that observation so that you can start to really see like what is my instinct, my trained instinct doing that's not what I was taught in the hypnosis course. And the only way to do that is to observe yourself observing somebody else. Does that make sense? So, like I said, even if you don't end up doing it, even if you don't end up doing this three-person practice, but you should, I really want you to, but even if you don't, play that mental experiment of Why is it that even when I'm observing, I still think I have input? I still think I have something to add to this. Gilles, you nodded no. Did it not make sense?
No. So you're talking about point three? Try anything you can think of?
Okay, well, that's something I was saying just to you is
Yeah.
I think to convince yourself to really like when you're a trained therapist already and you know skills and you know coping mechanisms and advice you can give, go ahead and when your instinct tells you, provide it, add it, and see what feeling you get out of that. See what happens.
I'm laughing because for the last 6 months, I've tried really hard not to do that anymore.
Well, good. I mean, maybe you've trained yourself out of it, and if
Yeah.
so, then I would say keep going the way you're going. But what I'm trying to do with these 3 points here is prove to you your irrelevance, basically. Because the
Yeah,
more you, yeah,
like I have a student on placement right now, and she says, "You never try to put anything in there." Like I'm trying my best to try to fix, and I said, "Right there, that's where you went awry." As
exactly.
soon as you
Good.
try to fix, you're
Perfect.
going awry. Try
Perfect.
not to do anything, just try to listen
Yeah.
and
Don't
notice
even
what's
try
going
not
on.
to do anything. Just don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so assign to that student the 3-person model so that she can see every time she gets the instinct to interfere.
Okay.
That's what the whole point of that little exercise is to train students out of that thing of, and I'm terrible at that. I mean, you can see how I do the demos. I have that real instinct to like, you know, but the truth is that all is still us not trusting the process. Okay, let's get into the theory for today. What you're looking at here is what happens when a client comes to you. This is the client with their problem. The orange is this kind of like thick shell they have around them that tells them they have a problem. The only kind of person who comes to see us is somebody in this situation because they are self-admittedly frozen where they are, stuck where they are. So, what does this sound like? I've always been a smoker and I don't know how to stop, even though I want to. I have been trying to lose weight for 30 years and I just can't. It's like stuck ideas where the person thinks their problem is a part of their identity and there's no openings here. There's no way to crack this little shell. What we know from our hypnotic perspective is that there are ways out. Those are the green dots. Perhaps they take some distance or time, but the closer these get to this person here, the sooner they're going to feel better. So the only thing we're ever trying to create in our sessions, this is so important. The only thing we're ever trying to create in our sessions is this feeling here, where the client has choices. That's very different than, oh, I'm a non-smoker now and I'm gonna, open a spa and one solution kind of idea. No, we're not looking for that. What we're looking for is for the client to sit in front of you and say, oh, I didn't think of that. Huh, maybe there are some different things that I could choose. That is the whole cat's meow, is when they have options. I'm going to give you a short anecdote about that. And then you can start to leverage their motivation as to, well, which choice do you really want to go with? So this is all we're going for. This is the purpose. How are we going to do this? Well, now we're getting to the crux of why motivation is so important. Person calls you with their problem. What are we going to do to get them to this point where they're open to change? Well, we're not going to untie their problems on the call because then they're A, not going to buy it, and B, we don't really have any support for them. So, what we're going to use instead is this motivation juice. And the motivation juice is what we're going to learn for the next 2 days. And it's what creates this possibility for the client to consider change. This consideration of change is the only way to get to this possibility later. If they never go through this red circle possibility, there's no chance to take them here. How are we going to create this openness in them is to leverage their own reasons why they want to change. So this is what we're going to do on this discovery call. I'm going to tell you about this on day 3 in detail. If you don't know what I mean yet, don't worry about it. I'm just giving you an overview right now. So what we're doing is client comes with their problem. We use motivation. Now they have in their mind this idea that they can change. Now, 2 things will happen. What do you guys think the 2 things that are going to happen are? You motivate them to change on the discovery call, then there's two effects of that. Right, Jody. Either they buy it or they don't. So number one is either I collect money or I don't. So the motivation is leverage to get paid. Number one, it is a transaction. That's very important. But what happens number two is actually what I'm focused on right now. Well, I don't want to say that. I'm focused on both. But there's more. This is the payment. Yes, this is good. We like this. This is our paid clients who are saying, okay, well, if you can get me to this change, I'm going to give you the money. But also, what happens then on a hypnotic level, on a psychic level? Yeah.
If I'm looking at the graph, it's either that the change is immediate or change occurs with choice.
Yeah.
Meaning change might occur like the example you gave the cocaine client, that there has been change in thinking, not change in behavior yet, but they see that they have choice.
Yeah, you're on the right track. Exactly. And that's an interesting observation. Maybe the graph isn't clear enough, but this little circle up here, the little group, orange circle of change, is the client absorbing the idea based on this conversation that this is possible for them. That's why that discovery call is so very valuable because when they start, a lot of the time they're like, well, I'm a smoker and that's how I've always been. But then they leave the discovery call thinking, well, I've always been a smoker, but this lady says it's possible for me to not be a smoker anymore. And then what does the subconscious mind do with that idea, even if it doesn't accept it or agree with it?
It buys into the idea that there could be change or choice.
Exactly. It just like, even if it doesn't buy in, which we want it to, if we do the motivation call correctly, then it fully buys in. And then the first session is so easy because they've already bought in. But even if you don't get that 100% conviction, the effect of the discovery call is this little box opening. Is just this little possibility. Well, she does have a good track record. She does have a lot of credentials. It does seem that a lot of people have changed. She was very convincing. She did answer all my questions. She does seem to understand the mind. That's the way the client is thinking when they leave, if you do your job right. And now they're thinking, actually, maybe change is possible for me. Why is this so very important to motivate them into this possibility before they even do the session? So that when they come for the session, you've already prepared the outcome. That's what hypnosis is, you guys. That's so important. Hypnosis is not just, oh, you come for the session, I untie the knots and motivate you in the meantime. Hypnosis is the outcome is set before you even show up. I'm holding the outcome, me, the hypnotist. That's my job. And I'm going to show you why my conviction is true and correct based on my experience by sharing information, which is motivational. So I'm the one who's opening this box for them, and they're just coming into it. That's the discovery call. Now that they have this opening for change, what's happening between the time they have the discovery call and their first session? What's happening? They're doing my job. The job is already happening. Processing is happening without me having done jack shit except for the discovery call, which is a lot. I shouldn't say it's jack shit because it's a lot. But that's the whole idea is I have begun the processing prior to the session's beginning. The choices are already more proximate. Do you see how they moved closer? Just based on this motivation. This is what makes it an MOS model. This is what makes it really fast. MOS, you guys remember what that means? Minimum optimum service. It cannot be a minimum optimum service if there isn't this piece to it. Because then I'm back to where the therapist is, which is, well, why do you even have this problem? Which is so annoying and boring and not forward looking. So the point of the motivation at the outset is to elicit change in the client before you even work with them. One thing that happens to me quite regularly is people come to my discovery call and then they say, "It's so weird, I already felt different," or "I feel different right now," or like, "Are you hypnotizing me already?" And I'm thinking like, that's powerful because I'm really not. But the strength of my questioning is so motivational that their mind is already onto problem solving without me ever even having done, "What's the problem? Let's do the hypnotic interview." So you see how now I'm saying we got to go back a level out of the hypnotic interview, which is our strongest little tool at the helm of problem solving. But actually, what we want to do is make our job easier by stepping back a level, taking a broader view, and making the whole thing simpler and faster by going with something positive and forward looking, which will incentivize that problem solving later. That's how the subconscious mind works. It will backwards rationalize, it will come up with something backwards from the outset backwards if we give it something like throwing a toy to a dog, right? It'll bring the toy back. But that's the same thing we're doing in the discovery call is like, "Here, let me throw your toy into the future." That's motivation. And then the client's subconscious goes and gets the toy and runs it back to you. And then during the session, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I do feel better." Well, that's because I threw the toy to begin with. You get that? That's a lot different than let's just start with digging into your problem. Because now we've created a lot of context and a lot of dimension for the client. So, because I've set it up that way, I don't feel pressure when the session begins. That is really the key to the more powerful transformation is as long as we can afford the client new choices, as long as we can solve their ability to not have a choice, which begins on the discovery call with the motivation, then the context of their problem is not important to me, no matter how big or small it is. So I don't feel pressure. I'm never looking for an outcome. I'm always just looking for the unconscious moment. Once I find the unconscious moment, the outcome will create itself. So what we're doing is what this kite surfer is doing, which is detaching from client's problem, size of the problem, category of the problem, caring about the client. I'm going to talk to you more about that this afternoon, how to not care. Prearranged techniques, scripts, conclusions to where the problem came from, which is, as you know, the root cause, how breakthrough should look and sound. All of that is irrelevant because once the problem is not perceived in the same way, then the choice opens up. That's where the problem no longer exists. So we want to drift through the sessions instead of direct them. If you feel that you're directing them or that you're managing them, go back to this feather and drift.